This is a luxurious long-distance bus. The spacious and bright bus is equipped with beige reclining seats with wooden patterned floors, and the air conditioning keeps the interior comfortably cool, while plain curtains shield the scorching heat outside. Sitting by the window, I felt lucky for spending a little extra money, as the luxurious comfort of this bus was unexpected for a small town like this. The bus soon filled up, and a short, chubby middle-aged man with a dark face sat next to mine, introducing himself as Christopher Anderson, and we quickly struck up a conversation. About 10 minutes later, I learned a lot about Mr. Anderson, such as his workplace, residence, and even his daughter's school details. He mentioned that this was a familiar route for him, and the journey would take approximately 5.5 hours, with an expected arrival time of around 1 p.m. As the driver started the engine, the bus left a bustling station. A rather plain-looking young male attendant distributed complimentary bottled water to each passenger. Mr. Anderson joked about how lucky I was to experience the first air-conditioned bus on this route. He drank most of his water and dozed off as an action movie played on the television. But I remained intrigued by the passing scenery outside. After about an hour, the bus entered a valley, and the surroundings darkened. The driver switched to a lower gear as the bus slowly climbed along the mountain road. With the air conditioning turned off, I opened the window slightly, but the chilly mountain air surprised me on a hot summer day. At some point, a dense fog rolled in the mountains. The distant scenery at the foot of the mountain gradually disappeared under the veil of fog, making it impossible to see clearly. Despite the poor visibility, the bus's headlights were turned on, and it moved slowly through the milky sea of mist, resembling a tiny fish swimming in the foggy expanse. Surprisingly, the wisps of fog seemed to possess a sense of life as they seeped in through the cracks of the bus's windows. The interior of the bus was filled with the fog, and I began to feel a sense of strangeness. This fog lacked the usual sweet sensation and instead carried a slightly musty smell, as if it had 100 years of history. Moreover, its color started to change, becoming somewhat peculiar and turning into a shade of gray. I wanted to ask Mr. Anderson, but through the thin haze, all I could see was a plump, sleeping face. Even the trees on the roadside were indistinct, so I averted my gaze. I didn't know when the movie had finished playing, as the screen turned white. The bus fell into silence, and I just started feeling drowsy. Freezing coldness woke me up abruptly. I rubbed my eyes, but the fog thickened, making it difficult to see anything clearly inside the bus. Mr. Anderson, there's something odd about this fog. I nudged Mr. Anderson, but to my surprise, I found an empty seat. It was strange because I distinctly remembered him saying he would accompany me to the final destination. Could it be that he got off the bus earlier? I leaned over to take a closer look, and when I saw the surroundings, I was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. If I wasn't mistaken, there was no one in the bus, but I could clearly feel that the bus was still moving forward. I stood there, my face pale and my mind in a whirl. I could not think of anything, but kept repeating to myself, "What has happened?" A foreboding sense of dread crawled up my spine. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I began to try to shout. My dry voice cut through the thick fog, but there was no echo and no answer. At this moment, the fog inside the bus grew thicker and kept rushing towards me, seemingly turning red. I frantically waved my hands in an attempt to ward off this deadly fog, as if trying to escape a plague. However, it had no effect whatsoever. Suddenly, a more dreadful thought crossed my mind. The driver was nowhere to be seen, yet the bus was still moving. Oh dear, I couldn't afford to be entangled in the fog anymore. I desperately ran towards the driver's seat, colliding with hard objects along the way. But I disregarded the pain and lunged into the driver's position. The dashboard was dark, the engine silent, and the steering wheel motionless. Yet the bus continued to move forward. The mist from both sides was still seeping in continuously. I turned around and stumbled my way from the beginning to the end, feeling every seat, but there was indeed no one. There wasn't even a bag, as if those people from just now had never existed. "Mr. Anderson, where are you?" No matter how loudly I called out, no one else ever came. I suddenly felt a warm fondness for the chubby guy who wouldn't stop talking. The bus grew colder and colder, resembling a massive refrigerator that trapped me in solitude. My body shivered uncontrollably from the intense cold, and my teeth chattered incessantly. No, continuing like this, I might freeze to death or get dragged by this bus and end up in some fatal crash. I decided to jump out and escape. Suddenly, a faint sound reached my ears. I looked in the direction of the sound, but I couldn't see anything. Then, a whooshing sound came closer and closer. It turned out the bus was picking up speed, and the mist seeping in created turbulent airflows, almost like a tornado, rushing towards me. I swiftly lunged towards the window, trying to find the opening to escape. But no matter how hard I pushed or pulled, the window glass remained unyielding. "Help! Somebody save me!" I shouted in despair, desperately pounding on the glass.
Pound, pound, pound.
The sound reverberated heavily within the cabin. "Wake up!" Someone vigorously shakes my shoulder. I open my eyes. The glaring sunlight makes me squint slightly. The bus attendant stands before me, looking unhappy. "What are you doing? You almost broke the chair," he says while tenderly fixing the backrest. "Get off the bus. We've reached the station. Everyone else has left." Oh, it was just a dream. A wave of joy washes over me, and I almost jump up, hugging the flight attendant and giving him a few kisses. Standing on the sunny and bustling street, surrounded by the cacophony of the crowd, I heave a sigh of relief. Being alive in this world is not easy. That dreaded and fearsome fog. Not even a ghostly shadow is visible. Hey, someone pats my shoulder again. I turn around and realize it's Mr. Anderson. He's sweating profusely, his eyes staring blankly, and his lips are pale. I felt somewhat strange. Just moments ago, I was the last one to get off the bus. So how come? Before I could say a word, Mr. Anderson kept talking nonstop. He said, "You don't know, I had a terrible nightmare on the bus." He paused for a moment, looking flustered, and continued, "I dreamt that all of you disappeared, leaving me alone in the bus, surrounded by fog." My mouth couldn't close either. In that very instant, the warm sunlight and bustling crowd suddenly vanished. All around us, there was nothing but dense fog, which I couldn't tell if it was white, gray, or red. Mr. Anderson and I stood there, utterly alone in mist. With no one else around and no sounds to be heard,